Boom. I'm sorry, Ralph. I got your Gmail and I forgot to respond to it. I mean, I've been so caught up in everything that's going on here, I forgot. But I'm gonna respond to you. It's not fair. You've been a long-standing customer and viewer, and I didn't blow you off on purpose. Just a lot of stuff going on here, so I apologize. Got to get that out. Second of all, and less important than that first note, I am impressed with 60 Grit Sandpaper. I've always shied away from it. I tried it once, and it must have been like, oh, you know what it was? That low quality brown stuff. I'm not saying that the Gator brand, there's like a little picture of an alligator, there should be. I'm not saying it's the best stuff. I'm not saying it's like the silica carbide, the wet dry stuff. But compared to that brown, the cheap, get what you pay for kind of a thing, the 60 grit is awesome. And I wound up, I'm always showing you stuff. Look at that. And pulling it away. Glued it to my 8-inch diameter radius sanding block that I made with my table saw using a dado blade. The standard blades for my DeWalt table saw, 10-inch. But I wanted smaller diameter, diameter, smaller radii, so I used a dado blade. It would be nice if the hole for the arbor for trim saws, small ones, were the same size, so I could even make tighter ones. But anyway, going back, I glued 60 grit to it, and it took me about an hour to perfectly round the back of this paddle ball, and it worked out well. And there's no hole. Look at no gouges there, but it actually feels quite smooth. And so about an hour of work, and this is how I go about it. Usually I'll do some scraping so it saves some of the sanding, but I was curious, how long does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? And it took about an hour. And just absolute mindless work, just. And you really need to get one of these rubber erasers. It's made for cleaning sand dust out of the grits. Doing some of this and erasing it, cleaning it out, then going back. Otherwise, you'd be replacing your sandpaper a lot because it will get clogged up. But I could see, as I'm sanding this during that hour of fun and festivities, how the dust will collect down the center, which means the sanding block isn't hitting that. But I take a pencil. It's a Sharpie. Don't use a Sharpie because it'll soak into the wood. And I'm going to be so careful that I'm not even going to use the weapon end of it. I would take, and it was almost like a crayon pencil, like an artistic pencil. I couldn't find any pencils, so I went downstairs and snitched one of my wife's red ones. Dark red. And just keep doing this. And as you're sanding, you'll see pencil lines disappear. And once that center one disappears, boom, you're golden. Just about an hour. And honestly, I'm not seeing any scratches or gouges in there. It's a perfect surface for putting rawhide on. And certainly I could peel this off and use ascending grits. I could go, I'm going to violate that 50% rule where you only take a grit the next step up within 50% of the preceding one. Yeah, because some grits seem to be more efficient. 220 is a fine grit, but it's very efficient at taking wood off. I love my 220. So if I was going to do a finish sand on that, I'd probably jump to 120 to 220 to, maybe being so bold, 320 and above. Not paying too much attention to the 50% rule. Yeah. Don't follow the rules, be your own person. Okay, some notes. Okay, I've got this wood for paddle bows. I went to a store, and all the wood that I have from that store shared a lot of commonalities. You can get red oak, and it varies in density and hardness greatly. It can. Red oak, which is a group, and there's a lot of different red oaks in there. Southern red oak isn't as sturdy as northern red oak because it probably has to do with how fast it grows, right? But I can get red oak one day, which is harder and denser than other red oaks, and I can make heavier bows, right? It has its own personality. I could go and get red oak, and it could be just garbage. For some reason, it doesn't make good bows. Well, I have on hand, and this is kind of going into the problems I had with that heavy red oak bow I was trying to make, one that failed, is that I was trying to force a heavier weight into wood that's best 45 to 50 pounds. I mean, it has its range. This bow design, these dimensions, 40, 50 pounds max. I could have gotten somewhere else red oak that was a little denser, for various reasons. It depends on how it can grow. What region? Did it come from Canada? Did it come from Michigan? I imagine the colder climate Canadian red oak is harder than Michigan red oak. But anyway, this particular red oak is relatively light in density, but it's springy. It's good. It's good wood, but this red oak wants to be 45 to 50 pounds in a paddle bow. That's it. You can't force something to be what it doesn't want to be. Is the lesson here. And when you're working with bows, you cannot impart your will on this piece of wood and make it something that it can't be, right? So the remaining wood I have from that purchase at that one store, Alpina, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Alpina's Home Depot. Good wood, but wants to be the... So I'm going to make a range of 45/50 pound red oak paddle bows. That's it. And this bow will be, it's light in density, it's springy. And once I fire harden it and impart that, I can impart my will upon. Fire hardening, giving it a reflex and resistance to string fall. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful bow. It will be. And as far as the rounding, oh my, it's like night and day. There are some bow channels out there that have been making bows for a while, and I look at them, it's like, I don't really care for the handle and the shape and stuff. It's kind of clunky, but they're functional. I really go towards aesthetics. You can see with the painting I do. Yeah, it's going to be a lovely bow. I'm just waiting on the rawhide for that talisman I made out of hickory. It's done. I just need the rawhide back now. It takes a while to get the rawhide. What other news? Yes. I have determined, I have to do something different. I hurt all over constantly. And the one thing I have to do to cure that is like gut health, Your health is your gut, by and large. And I have not been eating right. And part of that is just my state of mind. It's like, I don't like what I'm doing for the bread and butter of my economy, and so you get trapped in your own head and you wind up, I'm just going to eat pizza. I'm not going to cook a good, nutritious meal. I don't do well with gluten, but it's fast and easy. I need to change that. I need to really think about my health because I'm an aged person. And the way to escape my current situation, although it's not bad, I mean, yeah, I've got it pretty good here, is using the tools at my disposal, the natural tools, and that's my health. So be conscious of your health. That's a lesson there. Especially because I am going to make the jump. I mean, on my day off, my wife and I are going to try I don't know how the current situation is. Appointment tomorrow, Monday, Social Security. She's going to find out how much she's going to make. She, unfortunately, and this is personal and I'm saying too much, can't work anymore because of health reasons. So our plans kind of went awry, financially. So I need to be more of a breadwinner. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but yeah, for reasons, long-term reasons. Collecting Social Security, taking that money, which I can then invest in a stump grinder. I'm going to do it. It's all marketing and networking, getting a stump grinder. But at this point, what I'm doing is just trying to decide which kind to get. What brand, used, has to be. If I go for a bigger one, a 25 to 30 horsepower one with the hydraulics, so you're doing very little work, or a really high quality to start out one of these things where some of them are self-propelled, going 2 wheels, basically there's no hydraulics, you're sweeping it, which is more work, and it's a concern when you're going on 64. But there's a niche. A lot of stump grinder companies, and this is probably something you may or may not care to hear. You can go to another video now if you don't want to. We'll have the bigger ones, and some of them have the big diesels, and a lot of tree companies don't. They subcontract out. And so with a smaller one where you can get in the garden beds and close to houses and sneak through tight areas, that might be a niche, using a smaller, less expensive one, like a 15 horsepower, 11 to 15 horsepower swing one. And what do? You research those too. And you could get an expensive one made by Rayco. Man, they make a big one. 25 horsepower, it weighs darn near 600 pounds, and that would be a lot of effort to swing it. You might as well get a bigger one with the hydraulics that kind of powers itself. But DR actually makes one that uses green teeth. And green teeth? Isn't that the person that never brushes his teeth? But getting down to the minutia things, a lot of those hand swing ones, they don't use green teeth, and green teeth is the industry standard for the grinder teeth. They're the best out there. And DR happens to use green teeth where most of the other ones don't. So that's an important factor. And I actually saw a person, check this out. The green teeth look like cups, right? And from the factory, they're not as sharp as if you sharpen them yourself. If you've ever rented one, you basically struggled because rental companies don't necessarily keep their teeth sharp. In fact, we rented a brush bandit, a big, where you tow it behind your pick-em-up truck, wood chipper, and they maintain them so poorly, I'm not going to mention the company we rented it from, that there was barbed wire wrapped around the wheel. The cutter. But anyway, the green teeth, they look like a cup, and then there's a bolt. Easy to change out, right? And this one tree company, they mounted it into a drill press and took the spring out. You pull the lever down, the drill press, and then it pops back up. They took that spring out, so it just kind of lays there, and then duct taped, I love this, a wrench to that handle so it put a certain amount of pressure on it. And underneath, they had a grinder with a diamond wheel, a narrow diamond wheel, right? Sitting right underneath there, so the cup from the green teeth would rest on that, and it was basically an automatic sharpening system. Just kind of jerry-rigged that diamond sharpening wheel underneath a drill press. It had the spring removed. And they would get incredible sharpness with it, and it's about sharp teeth. But I like that DR. The small one that they make 4 of them. The biggest one, self-propelled. It'll power itself up the ramp into your pickup truck bed. Old man here. Probably get that one. And it only has an 11.5 horsepower, but again, green teeth, you can keep them sharper, easier than the other ones, and you don't have to replace the teeth as often. So, I'm either swaying towards that or a Vermeer used 262, I think it is, or 242, or used 292. Minimal sized, self-propelled with the joysticks here, hydraulic that does all the sweeping. And that would be literally very little work. 60, almost 64 again. $8,500 to $10,000 for a used one, and that's less than half the price of a new one. That's why stump grinding is expensive, because these machines are expensive. You get into the big 80 horsepower diesels, you're talking $50,000, $60,000 for a freaking stump grinder. Or $2,500 for a brand new DR, because these things get used and abused, and it's best to have a new one, but I can't afford even think about it, which the Social Security would more than pay for the payments on the stump grinder. So I'd be net ahead if I did that on my days off and after work at the grocery store. And the insurance and all the other associated things. Fortunately, you don't have to have tree company insurance. You can have landscaper insurance, which is quite a bit cheaper. Which, now, my climbing days, because I was a climber for Master Arborist, are behind me. I'm too old to be climbing, swirling around. That doesn't mean that I can't grow into a tree company. I'm driving around here and I'm seeing the handymen basically doing tree trimming, renting lifts from companies and doing the tree trimming. And yesterday, man, I'm driving around and I'm seeing the worst trimming jobs. The absolute worst trimming jobs. I'm not getting into the minutia of this thing, but it's like, oh my gosh, that's an ugly cut, and they cut straight down along the trunk and remove the branch collar. If you don't know what a branch collar is or proper trimming techniques, Google branch collar and proper trimming techniques. I'm seeing the worst trimming around here. I could, definitely go from the stump grinder to getting a bandit wood chipper, do cleanups and stuff, and maybe grow a tree company. And I've got a couple of grandsons. Maybe they can take over, be my employees. But that's it. I have to get to work. It's Sunday. It's Easter. Happy Easter, everyone. Hoping you're having a good day so far. And that's the one thing about retail is you learn really quickly that these holidays are more work. Work all the holidays. Labor Day, I didn't get my alternating weekends. You're kind of stuck. But that's the way it is. That's life. I'm really loving this paddle bow, and that's the direction I'm going to go in. It's a bow design that I really like. I'm going to go into the extra effort to do the hog back, I think, on that, razor back on the ends, the tips, and pretty much concentrate on those, I think. Those and the horse bows. It's predictable, and again, when you're trying to make extra money doing this, you have to do what's predictable. You have to have a product that you can create, and don't get into long range projects that you're making the same money on per hour. And also, I'm gonna have a reminder up here is that don't force things into things that they're not gonna be successful. Again, you get this piece of wood, you're making a certain design, that piece of wood will dictate its best draw weight. Another good day. I think summer is actually on its way. I haven't seen snow in a few days. That's all.